Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, where every week you'll hear conversations with experts who are knee deep in their work to make the world a better place for all of us. These people are tracking some of our world's most vexing problems, and yet they still think that a bright future is possible. We need to see what they see. And that's what this podcast is all about. I've found that their insights give us the steps that we can take in our own lives to live with more purpose and progress and connection. So, welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm Dr. Linda Ulrich, founder of Ever Widening Circles, the only place on the internet that's been doing good news about insight and innovation going uncelebrated since 2014 with no politics and no ads. We have had no agenda except to prove that it is still an amazing world. And along the way, I've talked to thought leaders all over the world who put one foot in front of the other every day with a kind of optimism that's way important for us all to know about. Their perspectives can help us live better lives. And today I have someone that you are going to so enjoy. Today we're going to meet Tania Carriere. She's an expert on what does it really mean to live life to the fullest. She moved from an international career in organizational development to a personal leadership offering. She decided that it served her own heart and what makes her soar to help individuals find a way to live their life in the best way they could possibly live. She's all about personal growth and leadership, whether that means in your working life or your family, all about living well. She runs a retreat company called Advivum Journeys, which means to life, like the toast. Advivum, I think that's that. What do we say when we toast to life? Welcome, Tania.
Thanks so much, Linda. It's so lovely just to hear you talk about the goodness that there is in the world. I'm sitting here just beaming and smiling. I absolutely agree with you. We need more chances to share with one another these things that light us up, and there are many. I simply agree with you. There just are not enough opportunities where we sit down and say, tell me all that's good,
Yes.
instead of, tell me what you heard on the gossip. So thank you so much for creating this space.
Well, I'll say you and I have connections with two other thought leaders that are really important in our lives that we've also interviewed on this podcast, Chip Conley and DeWitt Jones, who I would start out this podcast referring people to. After you hear Tania speak, you will understand how discerning she is about her incoming. I think you are very, very good at something I keep talking about on the podcast. How it's time for us to all curate our incoming, who who we're spending our time with, what we listen to, what we allow to shape our perspective and our future. So, give me more depth on what exactly you do, so people understand why all this is so important for us to connect about.
Yeah, I love that, Linda. We are so called, I think, now more than ever to really craft our experience. Our life is our experience. And I really hold as a fundamental belief that we're responsible for crafting how we experience and what influences our life. And everything that we come in touch with does that. So, my work is really around helping people put themselves in a place of discovery. Discovery for me is one of my greatest passions. And knowing that I can help someone leverage how to be in discovery means that I can help them be in a choice position for how they want to live. So I do that, as a coach, one-on-one with people. I do that with people on retreat, very particular kinds of retreats where I believe if we have crafted the whole environment, the nature of the questions, the quest that you are on, then I can really create a space for people to come up with discoveries, or as I like to say, epiphanies that will help. If you change your life just by 1 degree today, in 10 days, 10 years, that 1 degree shift is an entirely different trajectory. And that excites me to no end. And I really think I'm not going to leave, those 1 degrees up to just anybody to come in and turn my dial. It's me. I am always going to be shifting that to find my next trajectory, what's going to make me live my life to the fullest. Because in the end, that's all that matters. And fullest, requires a lot of attention. No one else can know for me what will bring meaning, what will bring purpose, what will bring a sense of self, a sense of knowing and calling.
Yes. Okay. So I've been writing as fast as you can. If on the video recording of this interview, people see me looking down. It's not that I'm checking my text. We talked yesterday. I'm just going to own this, Tania. Tania and I chatted yesterday, and it was supposed to be like a 20-minute call, and we were on the phone for almost 90 minutes.
It was awesome.
It was so fun. And we were comparing so many notes, and there's so much overlap. And I think that overlap comes from the fact that there are some, I don't want to say universal truths, but some paths that have been successful for thousands of years for human beings. They usually involve kindness. They usually involve being thoughtful about what you do next. And I'd like to make a little synopsis for folks about the 3 parts of the journey that this conversation is going to have, because you've already mentioned all 3, and I want people to know what's coming, because this is such an important interview, and I know that you're going to give people all kinds of new insights that they can use every day. So the first section of this way of thinking about our lives and getting to living fully is about choice, about recognizing that we have so many choices every day. The second part is about this discovery mode that you're going to talk about, how we get in that mindset of discovery. And the third one is epiphany. I think you've already dropped that word as well, which are these moments of peak experience where we have an aha that changes everything. My producer probably laughing in the background, because I'm very famous in my family and with my team for almost every day saying, this changes everything. I have it written on the door of my office, because I do seek knowledge so hard and religiously that I do have these moments almost every day where I think, oh my God, I didn't know that yesterday, and now this changes everything. So let's take people on a bit of a journey here. We all need to be reminded that we have a choice every day, about 1,000 choices.
Yeah.
We're not the victims of circumstance, almost never, actually. So talk to us about choice.
For me, that is a fundamental belief, and fundamental to my work, but also to my life. I think that, I hear, and I've experienced this, this feeling that many people have. They say, well, that's the way that I am. I just had to do it. Well, that was expected of me. That is who I should be. My experience is actually that is not true. And I was really fortunate to learn this really early on in my life. In my 20s, early 20s, I went over to Paris, and I was, just this classic trip of tired, exhausted, because I had finished my degrees. I had done as I should. I had a job, but it wasn't really all that fulfilling. I had a boyfriend and we broke up. I was suffering from being a perfectionist, really trying to achieve the goals that everybody else had set. So I took myself on this pity party trip to Paris, and the most wonderful thing happened as I was on this train. It was a really long train ride, and pulling into the station, my stuff is scattered all over the car, you know, my books and my journal and my pens and my sweater and my hat and all this stuff. And I'm looking as I'm collecting all of this stuff. You have to pack your backpack perfectly, right? Or it will never all fit back in. So I'm looking at out the street as I'm packing, and I'm imagining all the people who live here, who are probably happier than I am, you know, who are in great relationships, who feel good about themselves, who are laughing, who, and I'm imagining all these other people who don't have the pressures that I have, so I imagine. And I wonder what it would be like to live like them, to be them. And as I'm packing this stuff up, I have this sudden moment of, well, what if I don't pack up the part of me that is full of anxiety, the part of me that is so worried about being perfect that she forgets to laugh or to live, the part of me that really succumbs to all of the shoulds, who I should be as a woman, who I should be as a daughter, who I should be as an employee. What if I leave her on the train and I just walk off and I become this sort of free gypsy woman that laughs and just has fun, because nobody here in Paris knows me. So no one's going to look at me and go, Tania, are you all right? This is not who you normally are. And it's exactly what I did. I stepped off that train and I remember so clearly. I walked over to a fountain where there was a cafe, because there always is, you know, within 20 feet of you. And I sat down and I flirted with myself, and I flirted with my cafe au lait, and I flirted with the waiter, and I flirted with the trees. And I was just like, this sense of, I could be this woman. Everybody thinks I already am. Nobody knows that I'm not her. And it was a clear epiphany moment. There is a choice to be made here. There is no reason that I stay as that other woman. I can bring this woman back home with me. And so I did. And that was really the beginning of this, you know, that 1 degree shift was the beginning of a whole career that I couldn't even envision or articulate at that time. It was the beginning of a whole new collection of friends, a whole new collection of wonderful people like yourself. Here you are, you know, that many points further along this same arc that happened when I decided to choose to live the life I wanted to live. So I do believe choice is exceedingly important. And I don't know where we talk about that. Where do we talk about who I chose to be today? I wish there were more places.
You know, yesterday you told me that story, and I wrote down a quote from you, which which I love to give people. You know, here's what you do next. Like this is a great one. Here's what you do next with the story that Tania just told us. She said to me at one point, "What am I choosing now?"
Mm-hmm.
I love that simple sentence. What we can all do next after you're sharing that insightful story with us is that we can ask ourselves all the time, more often, what am I choosing now? You know, your teenager does something right in front of you that makes you crazy. Your boss, your coworker, you know, whatever it is. The plumber doesn't show up. You know, what am I choosing now? Am I choosing anger? Am I choosing all the different things that we could be choosing? And of course, the next question is probably, what am I missing now?
Yeah,
But just to
yeah.
ask yourself and pause and ask yourself, what am I choosing now? Is the kind of self awareness that can get us to living a fuller life. Because we stop and ask that question, it would be just like you did. You decided to leave that other woman on the train
Mm-hmm.
and you stepped off
Absolutely.
and chose to be something else. I love that story. And I want to share a 1% shift analogy that I think, you know, most of us have quite high expectations for ourselves. And my brother's a pilot for Southwest Airlines, and he has reminded me that if he starts out in New York City and he's 1% off on his calculation, and he's headed to the West Coast. 1% over 4,000 miles is going to have him end up in in Seattle instead of LA, right?
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
that's a really important way to think about how important that 1% is, because over time it's compounding itself to and have us end up in a completely different place than we probably
Well,
expect.
and I think it's so encouraging because so many people, also think of when I'm trying to create the life that I want, I need to change everything 100% right from now. And that's overwhelming and daunting. And of course it is. I mean, who would recommend that strategy? That, that, I mean, that's extreme. Just like there are extreme sports, which some people will do, there are extreme life changes, which some people will do, but it's really not recommended as a daily activity. The 1% change is where we're going, right? It's 20 minutes of yoga, not, okay, let's suddenly go into extreme yoga for 8 hours. So it's so important, I think, to sort of go, what is the little 1%? I'm going after
Yeah.
1% today. I mean, maybe it's just wake up and ask myself, well, who do I want to be now? Now, who do I want to be now? Who do I want to be in this relationship or in this conversation with myself? Or that's why I think morning practices like journaling are so important, because that's where we often can capture the 1%, the small little shift that we're hoping to make that day. Gratitude practices are the same thing. They're about the 1%. Can I hold, myself in this space of deep reverence for something, gratitude for something, and just allow that to play, in the baseline of what's happening today.
It reminds me of a great business thought leader named Donald Miller. Have you ever heard of Donald Miller?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he has this way that you look at your day. He has a day planner that he recommends, and part of that day planner is that you start out your day and you pick your 3 major things you got to get done and all that. But there's another part where you have to say, if I were to live this day over again, what would I do differently? But you haven't lived it yet. So it's part of it's like kind of like on a practical side of journaling. If you're not in a mind to journal, as I'm sure Tanya recommends and teaches people to journal, just for us practical sorts, I do that part of what he's suggesting, and it makes me behave differently as the day goes by, because I think about
Yeah.
what I would have done had I not made the choice, had I not been conscious
Yeah.
about the
I
choices I'm
also
making.
have people, when they're journaling, think about 3 things that you can predict, with a high degree of confidence are going to happen today that will fill you with joy. They'll be your yay moments, and think of them now. And then when they happen, make sure you say yay. This is a yay moment. And then tonight, when you're looking back over your day, remember those 3 things where you were like, yeah, that was that moment when, my daughter showed up and we had a cup of coffee. It doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. And when this happened and that happened. And I find that the most practical way to integrate gratitude into my day, so that gratitude doesn't become just this, I don't know, I can't quite grasp where I'm at, this state of being. It's actually, a tactical thing that I'm practicing. And that's my favorite gratitude practice.
Oh, that is a good practical one. Okay, we'll make sure that's in the show notes just to remind people. So
Yeah.
you talk about fundamental questions. Tell us about the fundamental
Mm.
questions.
I think that questions are really so important, and being willing to ask ourselves questions is important. But there's sort of 2 categories of questions. There's the questions that we frame that are about our external world and how we can understand it. And then there are the questions that get asked over and over in ourselves. And I see when I'm working with people that they all come down to some fundamental questions, all the quests that we're on. Am I worthy? Huge question. Am I worthy? Do I feel that I am worthy of this relationship, of this ask, of this moment, of this dream? It's a big question that we carry. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? When people are in, argument or holding different fundamental beliefs and start sort of chatting with one another in an abrasive manner, I always listen for the wish underneath, which is, do you hear me? Not do you agree with me? Do you hear me? Right? And then another fundamental question, which I think is at the heart of so much of what drives us, is, will you choose me? Will you choose me? And those are such vulnerable questions, but I think they underpin so many of our choices, so many of our anxieties. And I just find it's really important to be able to hear ourselves ask those questions.
Mm.
They're hard to discuss, and but that they're often what drives a lot of our behavior. So it's so funny, little argument about, I don't know, where should we put the garbage pails? Should they be at the side of the house, or at the in the little alcove? And this argument that my husband and I are having about garbage pails, it's really not an argument about the garbage pails. It's about, do you hear me? Do you
Mhm.
hear that I have a need? Do you
Mm.
hear that I have a want? Right? And if I could bring myself to that, we wouldn't waste our time, on a really nonsensical conversation that, the next day we look at each other and go, really? That took up 20 minutes? So
And
so
there's two
I
two
hold those
sides to that
questions.
question. Don't you think there's two sides to that question too? Because that's the courtesy that we should be giving others, is that to make sure they feel heard when we're
Absolutely.
right. It's not just us asking ourselves, do you hear me? It's us knowing that that's what the other person needs to understand from us to be able to move on, or to repair, or to collaborate. They need to feel like we
Yes.
heard them and that we chose them. I love that. I love that little notion too. I think it's really important with teenagers to feel like we hear them and we choose them, because it's so easy to alienate teenagers.
Yeah. I think when we accept that these are universal questions,
Mhm.
then it really does become our responsibility to hear ourselves. So it's my responsibility in that conversation to go, wow, this is not about the garbage cans, but about my feeling that I'm not being heard. Why? I need to put that. That's my work. That's not anybody else's work. But then, if this is a universal conversation, then, chances are you have this need to be heard in this moment, right?
Yeah.
That's also my work. I also have to stand for that. It's a certain level of accountability. Again, going back to, if I am responsible for crafting, right, for curating the experience of living my life to the fullest, I'm responsible for that. No one owes me that. It
Hmm.
means that then I have to do the work for me, and I have to have that same consideration for everybody else that I am in partnership with.
Hmm. And all these involve, back to our overarching theme in this part of the chat, is it's about it being making a conscious choice, not just going along on autopilot.
Yeah. And, we were talking about yesterday, the barrage of information that comes in, and really having the discipline. I think there's discipline
Mhm.
required, but also there's an art. We're curating. What do I want to allow to come into my bubble? You know, that ticker tape that plays at the
Yes.
bottom, is that really the most important information that should influence you? The conversation that you're overhearing, the emotion that you're standing in, we can curate all of that. And we can curate by keeping some things out and just saying, you know, this news talk radio that just filled me with an hour and a half of angst and fear, I'm not sure that that's the 1 degree shift that I was looking for today. But also, I can curate in, you know, podcasts like this or experiences that fill me with delight and joy. Yeah, I curate those in. That is the 1 degree shift I am looking for. And that goes back to your planner. You know, those should be the things that we color code in our planner and sort of go back and say, am I happy with the curation of this day?
Well, this is dancing around something else that I wrote down yesterday that you said that I think is such a fabulous quote. Um, you reminded me that we also have the ability to not only ask ourselves, uh, what am I choosing now? But I love the second one. This cannot be my final answer. I love that. Like when I'm arguing with my husband or frustrated with something with my team, or right now there's something going on the farm. By the way, this background behind me is the real background. This is the family farm. And people always ask me that because it looks like some fabulous, artificial background. But there's something going on the family farm over there, and I get to choose how I perceive that and what I do next and all that. So I love this when we're in a funk or when we're furious or all the different negative emotions we can have. We can say to ourselves, this cannot be my final answer.
Yeah. Absolutely. It never is, which is liberating. It's daunting sometimes, a little scary, but also very liberating. So just hold on. This is not the final answer.
So that leads
Just
to
hold
that
on.
that leads to that second thing. I think if we can say to ourselves, this negative state that I'm in right now, this cannot be my final answer about my teenager, about my work, about whatever, then that leads to the second major category that we should talk about, which is this getting into discovery mindset.
Absolutely.
So
I
talk to
think
us
that,
all about that.
well, choice, you know, if we started with choice and the importance of choice, choice can't happen unless we have discovery and then we have epiphany, because those are what allow us to make a different choice. So for me, discovery is allowing myself to be in this place of either no expectation, or the converse is that I have an expectation that everything is an unknown, that everything is not known. It's not knowable. It will be new today. It will not be the same as what happened yesterday. I will not be the same as who I was yesterday. My choices won't be the same. You know, it's why I have such a passion for travel, because I think that is sometimes the easiest way. And so when I say travel, it can be to a different country, but it can be just as you've done to the family farm. You are now in a different environment. It is allowing you to see yourself, your family, your thoughts differently, right? You are expecting it to be an unknown. And I think discovery is really an expertise that we all have to refine, right? Can I be aware of what's happening in this moment? Can I hold myself open to a new experience? And for me, I like to say, can I look out of my side eye? Because when I'm looking for answers, when I'm trying hard to find what I'm looking for, I often miss all of the little bits of magic or information that are coming in from the side. You know, I've experienced that in a very real way. I'm sure everyone's had this experience of being lost even though it's really impossible these days to be lost because you have a GPS and a phone and right, everything else is with you. But I was in Italy and I was trying to get to my Airbnb, and I don't know, the little blue dot was not bringing me to the door, and I kept, going around in weird circles, and I was passing this big statue fountain. I recognized like that was a place that I kept going by, and I kept going by this cafe with this couple who I watched them progressively eat their lunch because I went by so many times, and I was lost. And in my mind, I was lost. I finally called the guy. The door was like not 2 minutes away. I just kept walking by it. And I realized that this whole time, because I was so focused on lost and so focused on seeing a door in a certain way, that I was missing the fact that the door looked different. It was right there, side eye, but I was missing it. It was also missing the fact that I kept walking by the very things that later that afternoon I was going to go see on my little map of things to notice in this village. The fountain with the dude, the little cafe on the beautiful street. Everything was there. I was so focused on the refrain and trying to answer the question in the way it should be answered. So from that, I learned to say, I'm just not found yet. I'm not lost. I'm just not found yet, which shifted me now into a completely different place of discovery. If I'm not found yet, then what's the little breadcrumb I'm supposed to see? Why didn't I just stand with that statue and enjoy it? It was on my list of things to see anyways. Why didn't I stop and have lunch, for goodness sakes? It looks so good. I could actually introduce myself to that couple because I think by the end they knew me. So side eye noticing, I think, is so important in discovery. I could have seen the door if I said, what does a door in Italy look like? And by the way, it looks like a big, huge red gate. It doesn't look like a door.
Yes.
So anyway.
Well, that goes back to expectations. Yesterday we were talking, and here's another thing you said. You said, when I stop looking at the pixels, I can see the big picture.
Yeah.
And it's very, very easy for us to focus on individual pixels. And, is this right? Is she saying the right thing? Is he doing the right thing? All these little things that are sort of mental chatter is focused on what's wrong with this picture, what's wrong with this picture. And we're looking at all these individual pixels. But you pointed out that if we stop having expectations that every little pixel should be in some order that we've gotten fixated in our minds, then we can see the big picture. I really like that concept.
And couldn't we afford that kind of compassion to people as well? People's positions on things or people's behaviors one day. And yes, I'm all about, of course, managing boundaries and having great respect for self and other, but also we can hold compassion for one another and say, this little pixelated moment that I'm experiencing this person in, is that really the big picture of this person? Could I just understand that maybe in this moment, they're having a moment, they just had an argument with their husband about the garbage can, and now they're arriving to me in this slightly flustered place. Is it about the pixel of that moment, or can I take a deep breath and say, who do I know Linda to be? Yes, I do know her to be a woman of compassion. So what's going on in this little pixelated moment? Maybe we don't even need to talk about it. We can just say, hey, deep breath, and on we go. So I wish we had more of that with one another.
I look at what we've been through in the United States with the level of division that we've had. And something came to me a couple of years ago that I really doubled down on. I love to have these chats with thought leaders around the world because they seem to. So the best thought leaders in the world at Ever Widening Circles, where we write about people who are solving some of the most vexing problems in the world. Ever Widening Circles is not, puppies and mailbox stories. These are people who have discovered that we can save all the remaining rainforests with an old cell phone. That's an incredible story. Or that single mothers make the best game wardens in Africa for a host of reasons that'll knock your socks off. So it's these kind of articles we write over at Ever Winding Circles. And I tell you, it's always someone who comes up with a successful win that doesn't need an enemy. The idea is so good. They don't have to have an enemy to have it, reflect some its magnitude. So I love this. If we go into every situation, well, here's another quote. You say, "I go expecting that everything is unknown." Now, that is a great way. You said a lot of cool things yesterday, didn't you?
I was on fire.
You were. And I just love this quote too. I'm hoping the podcast producers will put these things that I'm really highlighting definitely in the show notes so that everyone can reflect back on them in the Ever Widening Circles article that will be about this interview. This is huge. I go expecting that everything is an unknown. If we can do that with our interactions with others, with our trip to a new restaurant, with our, travel plan or whatever, gosh, we're in that discovery mode. It's our expectations that usually defeat us.
Yes.
When things don't, when we're married to an outcome, this is what I always say: when we're married to an outcome, the odds that things turn out the way we imagined are almost zero. And so,
And that expectation that everything is an unknown then turns into the invitation that I can extend myself. If it's unknown, then what is there to learn? What am I meant to discover right now? What am I meant to lean into? It's unknown. I believe that every moment, every interaction has, and I'm on a full life scavenger hunt. So everything has something for me, something for me to be able to spot and collect. But in order to do that, I have to be in that position of holding myself open to the unknown and then hold myself to this. What can I learn? That's my job, to try and find what I can learn, to try and notice the learning moment or the epiphany moment, right? And I sort of think of epiphanies. For me, they're, epiphanies, they're sometimes just little ahas, sometimes they're, and sometimes they're like, holy, oh my goodness, that is going to just knock off the top of my head. I have to go lie down, so that can be on that whole range. But for me, if I had to draw you an epiphany, I would draw a little firefly. Because if you've seen fireflies, you can never look at a firefly and see it for a long time. It emerges and then it falls away. It emerges and falls away. And that is really something that I notice is important in when I'm trying to be in a learning point. Should we just pause for a moment?
yes. So we pause there a second because it's interesting what Tanya is commenting on is about expectations, and I'm here on the family farm, and so many things are going on around me. You saw me wave a moment ago. That's people coming and going from my cabin to get their breakfast. Now we have big, huge equipment starting up right over there. My husband's shouting on the telephone. Now,
It's perfect.
I could choose to be very frustrated and, be shouting out demands, or I can just own it in this moment and just know that, this is life. And this is one of the things, Tanya, I'm really, really delighted about the pandemic is we've stopped expecting perfection in moments and from others. So we're going to move on to this epiphany thing. This epiphany section is what we want to finish big on in this interview. We're going to take a break and and tell you about a wonderful event that Ever Widening Circles is holding in October. And when we come back, we'll talk about Epiphany, and I'll and just we'll just own the commotion that's going on around us, and know that this is part of farm life, and I'm here, and Tania's there, and you're where you are, and we're all connecting despite anything that we might have that's irregular or imperfect. Okay, we're back, and Tanya, we're gonna really flesh this out about what this looks like to live a life of purpose and meaning and a full life. So we've talked about how important it is to recognize that we have a choice, that we are choosing every minute, what we focus on, what we decide is true or not true, and then what we decide to try and discover. Well, that's a part of a journey. That second part, after learning that we have a choice, is that sense of discovery, just to be in discovery, as you call it. And if we can get those two things right, we're going to have moments of epiphany. So let's talk about this. I call these peak moments for myself, like these moments where that I'm just shot up to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. Talk to us about, if you can get those other two things going, talk to us about epiphanies.
Yeah. Um, so you're right. Sort of choice being fundamental, knowing that I have it. I think also the important thing about choice, when we talk about living life to its fullest, it's not my definition. It's each of our definition. I define mine, you define yours. And so we're on a quest every day. That's why we're in discovery of what would it mean for me to live my life to my fullest today, my success measures. Whatever was important to me when I was 20 was absolutely correct for when I was 20, but didn't carry through to 25, to 30, to 35, and so on and so forth. And certainly here at 52 aren't the things that I'm still striving for. So that's why we are making choices and why we're in discovery. What will it mean to be at my fullest today? What is meant to inform me? And for me, what is the degree of delight that I can enjoy? Now, that's for me. That might not be a part of your fullest, right? Everybody has to define for themselves what it is that they are striving for. Then the epiphany. The epiphany is what feels like those little fireflies that just suddenly light up and then dissipate. And you expect that when I look back in that place, that firefly will still be there, right? So epiphanies require that we really tune in, because I believe that we have more than we actually capture. And how do we get there? I think that we need conditions that create epiphanies, conditions that usually involve lots of different experience and information. If I'm tracking on the same thing all the time, you're not going to be creating this sense of heightened awareness or this sense of discovery. But also being able to hold our big questions as a baseline as opposed to a primary focus. So again, when I was looking for the door, I didn't see the door, right? Often the answers come in the side, right? It's why you have epiphanies in the shower. You're not usually thinking about the thing in the shower. You're thinking about whatever, and you're like, oh, that's it, or sitting on the dock. It just kind of happens in these alternate side view moments. So I think it's important to know that we have to be in these different experiences, hearing different things, meeting different people, having conversations without expectation, so that you can get to that, I didn't know that. I never thought of that before. That's not how I think of things. Wow, that's what should follow those realizations is wow, not judgment. You might choose to hold a different opinion. Fair enough. But go first with wow, you know, wow, how is that possible? Wow, what would it be like to be standing there listening with that kind of point of view? Wow. And so, wow often leads to some kind of epiphany moment
Mhm.
when we can get into that place of awe or that place of wonder. These are all my favorite words. I love this idea. Maybe I'll do that this weekend, writing up all my favorite words on the walls around me, and have them just inspire me every day.
Well, and that is a mindset, that open mindset, there are countless little funny expressions, but when you're ready to hear the next message, you'll hear the next message, or when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or on and on they go. But it's a mindset of openness. Um, Maybe even yesterday when we were talking, you told this wonderful story about how a lot of epiphanies come out of discomfort. And
Oh, yeah.
if all we're doing is seeking comfort, seeking happiness, seeking, if all we're doing is just being like a heat missile for everything that makes us more comfortable and more happy, we're probably going to have all kinds of expectations built up so much that we can't even see the wonder that's around us. Tell the story, the bacon and egg story, because I think we've all been we've all been this person. But I would love for every single person who listens to this podcast to to recognize when they're being the bacon and eggs guy, and then
We've
jump out of it.
Yeah, we've all been the bacon and eggs guy sometime during COVID. I'm sure of it.
Yes.
I'm sure this has all happened to us. So I was, yes, traveling, working with a client. We were in Paris and we had daily check ins, morning check ins, coaching check ins. And so um, day 3 in particular, I noticed in general, people are pretty irritable when we do work together, because now things are itchy, they're not the same, and in this case we're also jet lagged, so that makes us all the more itchy. And this gentleman was just on a rant on how he could not get decent bacon and eggs in Paris, and what was wrong with Paris that it wasn't serving bacon and eggs, and who was not bright enough to do bacon and eggs. And I stopped and I said, my friend, we are in Paris. We are in the country of the most awesome coffee and croissant, and it will change your life. What are you not seeing because you are so insistent that you stay within the comfort of what you know? His expectation was, in order to achieve this day well, I need to set myself up in what I know to be true. And I'm like, well, you don't know that to be true in Paris. You know it to be true in your home in the States. We do awesome bacon and eggs. You are right. And it was so in that moment that he realized, wow, I walk into every business meeting with the same level of expectation, that I get what I'm expecting in the way I'm expecting it. And I walk into my family weekends with the same level of expectation, that we do our activities in the way that I know them so that I can enjoy them. And he translated it across all areas of his life. And I was like, how many things have you missed? How many moments of coffee and croissant have you missed in your life because you were insisting on the bacon and eggs? And bacon and eggs outside of the right environment are usually not all that great. And in COVID times, we all wanted Christmas to be Christmas and Thanksgiving to be Thanksgiving, and our funerals and our celebrations, and we wanted them to be the way they were. But in our place of discomfort, when we tried to figure out how do we do a Zoom wedding, it was uncomfortable. We discovered beautiful things. I hosted a Zoom wedding for one of my dear friends. And what she and her now husband had the gift of was seeing everybody arrive online. And I invited them each to check in and how were they feeling and were they excited and why did they feel today was beautiful. And they got to hear all the chat that normally happens, you know, whether it's outside of the church or in the park, that the bride and groom never hear because they're sequestered somewhere. And they got to see all the faces and they got to see everyone tear up and they got to hear everybody's joy, you know, and it was because of the discomfort of weddings on Zoom that led to this aha, this epiphany moment of what's important is actually hearing what's in people's hearts. It was awesome. So it was a lovely illustration. If we let go of this expectation, we get into the itchy, ooh, you know, this doesn't feel good. We then can transcend into, wow, what is emerging? What is there here to hear and learn? What can I take away? Epiphany moment. I hope that there is never a wedding from here forward where we don't actually capture all the thoughts and emotions of everyone showing up for this couple.
That is such a great example of this choice, discovery, epiphany scenario. Lovely, lovely example. And I hope people leave this podcast, you know, not necessarily looking for these opportunities because, you know, that's a bit of a tricky scenario too. You can sort of overforce this and
Yeah,
then it becomes harder and harder. You really just have to live life with choice, consciously one foot in front of the other, and then, at least in my own experience, it sounds like yours, these things pop up in front of you, and then you have to be looking at with your side eye to notice them, right?
yeah.
There's the progression. So there was a couple things before we wrap up here that we have to touch on that we talked about yesterday. I loved our conversation about that questions should leave you considering, not answering. So
Mm,
we had quite a bit of discussion about asking better questions and being okay with the mystery. You know, just not necessarily having to come up with solid answers, but being comfortable with just one good question leads to another, leads to another. So talk to us about it, how just asking better questions and more questions and being okay in those unanswered things can
yeah,
lead to
I mean,
epiphany.
I just noticed that we've placed great value on quick answers or short answers, right? Tweets. I can get it out there. And I think every tweet should be a question instead of a definitive, you know? It's like the best questions. Wouldn't the best moment when you got together with friends be when someone asked a question and everyone around the table with their cup of coffee or their glass of wine just kind of went, oh, wow, yeah. I don't know. I have to think about that. Like, that's chewy. That means we're going somewhere that we actually want to be considered in, and that we have to sort of check in and check with one another. And then we're going to pass it around the table and say, well, I don't know. What about this? What about that? And can we stay in the land of questions? Because ultimately, we're not going to live well if we're just moving into answers. Answers are like dead ends for me. You know, if it's a definitive, it's over. It's like, oh, check mark, but done, right? Turn it off. I'm like, oh no, I don't want that to be, the way that I am living life. I want I really think, as a coach, I often say that the moments you pay me for are the questions that we come to that leave you just going, right. I'm going to come back to you in a while. I need to go discover that, chew on that, see what the world thinks about that. I'm going to go, interview people about that. That's where we should be. So yeah, I don't know who I need to ask that all tweets become questions, but I think that would just shift everything for us. And question is an invitation. And an invitation is what we should be extending to one another and to ourselves. An invitation.
That goes back to that, when we can change division to discovery notion. When we feel that moment when we tense up and we want to defend our team, or we want to make some definitive statement about what we know, what our life experience has taught us. eh, I found that when I posit something to my brother who thinks completely differently than me politically, when I posit things to him as a question, when I'm truly curious, you think this way and I couldn't think further from that. Tell me how you came to that. I really want to know. And I'm not asking that so that I can get to say my answer. This is the key, right? How often do we ask questions just to be able to say our answer? No. we
Yeah.
just have to listen. And we have grown so much closer since I decided to adopt that way of understanding how he could think so differently than me, just 2 years apart or less, and growing up in a really tight family and stuff. And now I appreciate, he's left me with questions. I thought my answers were totally, so one of the things we talked about was that, back again, this cannot be my final answer. It's this life of constant expansion, constant growth, constant transformation of what we think is true or what we think is possible. One of the last questions I love to ask my guests is, I'm sure that you can envision a future for us all that we can't see yet because of your level of expertise. And I think you're, going from the world of organizational development and international business to working on personal development. I'm sure you see a future that the rest of us can't see. And I always like to ask my guests, what do we need to know? Like, what do you say to yourself sometimes in the darkness of the night? If they only knew this, then we could get things going in the right direction. What comes to mind when I pose that question to you?
I wish I had some artistic talent. What is really coming to me, I need a graphic artist to paint this for me. It's a choice between two panels. One panel, it's a black dot, which is the period at the end of the sentence, one black dot. And the other one is, when you look through those, as kids, we had them, these kaleidoscopes, and you turn them and all of these colors sort of constantly fall into one another. So that's the other dot, is this kaleidoscope color. And I think we spend so much of our lives going after the black dot, the period at the end of the sentence, the confirmation of what I know, of who I am, of it is true, of I'm there now, of I succeeded, top of the mountain, whatever it is, black dot, boom. When really what we want is the kaleidoscope that is always shifting, moving, colorful, inspiring. It's not meant to be a full stop. It's just meant to be this awe-inspiring journey. And I believe that if we could hold that, then everything that we are experiencing becomes something we are moving through. We experience people as people we are moving with, and they're not to know or not know, to judge, to agree with that. We are in this evolution, this journey together. And here we go. And that's why I named my company Advivum Journeys. It's about the journeying. Advivum, a Latin toast that means to life. Let us journey in a way that we are toasting life. That's what I would say to everybody.
That is so lovely. That is such a great note to finish up on. So we're gonna we're going to just let that sit, that thought. And I hope our listeners will just, you know, take in that last 2 minutes of Tania's insights from time to time. Maybe just go back. I mean, we've talked about a lot here, and the show notes down below are going to contain everything. Um, we talked about the hero's journey yesterday. We didn't get to that. I'm going to put a link to the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell down there. Um, I know that people are going to want to continue their journey with your insights and so forth. So where is the best place for people to reach you? Of course, it's going to be in the show notes, but share that with us for people that may be driving or walking.
I love being in conversation and in discovery. If that hasn't become clear, I'll state it one more time. So I invite people to join me every month. I host field trips where we get on and play with these concepts. I run them like little workshops. They're free. They're a place of community. We welcome everyone. So anybody who's curious, join. Of
It's an
course,
online, it's
that's
essentially an
online.
online,
Yes,
workshop, huh?
absolutely. So those are all virtual. So, and we have people come from all around the world, which was so exciting. It just makes that kaleidoscope just all the more brilliant. So you come to the website, which is advivumjourneys.com. So as you said in the show notes, and I work as a coach. So if you really want to explore and embed some of these things, that's one way. Or when you feel comfortable traveling again, come on retreats. We're opening them up in Baja, in England, in France, all over the world, because I really think that to travel is to get out of our bacon and eggs, to leave everything that we know and step into another space, which means we can step into another version of ourselves. So, and you know what? I'm also just someone who loves people. So email me anytime. I'm here. I'm here open, hoping.
This is just lovely. Thank you so much for sharing this little window of possibility for us. You know, as we've said, everything will be in the show notes. And remember to check out the Conspiracy of Goodness Network. So people like Tania are coming together. We have created a social media network at Ever Widening Circles called the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, where folks who want to see a better world, who want to live with purpose, who want to live to the fullest, can find each other. Because we haven't talked about it. We've talked a lot about personal perspective, but coming together with other people who are, who are in the same mindset as us can be such a multiplier. So I'm hoping you're going to find a lot of folks that share your enthusiasm for the kind of things that Tania shared with us today over there at the Conspiracy of Goodness Network. And as always, dive into the articles at everwideningsircles.com. There you will find a world of possibility that we aren't hearing nearly enough of on the evening news. And I hope all these connections to goodness and progress will carry you through your work week, and you'll start finding the kind of joy and wonder that Tania and I have been talking about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. And, thank you for today, but thank you for the movement that you are creating. I really do believe when we join up together, we create a chorus of voices. We create our own kaleidoscopes. And that is just so exciting to me. So, my deepest gratitude for the work that you're doing.
Well, we will continue on in many different iterations, and we will hold the insights that you just shared with us as out in front, because that's going to lead us forward together. Okay, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.